We're alive, we're alive, we're alive, we're alive. So, here we are for a moment of mental health. I'm celebrating and supporting mental health awareness today. We have Keegan coming on, and he is here. So I'm going to invite him to join me. Oh no, it says unable to join, Keegan. Oh no. So while we work out technical difficulties, this has never happened, so I don't know what to do. But Keegan and I are going to talk a lot today about mental health awareness and how to date your therapist, which I really like how he says that. What can people do if they feel a certain way about their life? So you know how we just all feel like, oh, my life is whatever it may be. Just how to work through those feelings and really get in the groove of taking care of ourselves. I think I have now. Keegan! Hi.
How's it going?
It's going good. How are you?
I'm well.
Oh, no, wait, Keegan, it's hard to hear you.
Oh, no.
Oh, wait, I heard that.
Yeah.
It's like going in and out.
Okay. Let's see. Maybe if I get out and come back in my computer.
Sorry?
Maybe if I log out and come back in.
I don't know. Can you do it on your computer?
Let's see.
Sorry, IG. So we're still playing with technical difficulties, but I'm going to keep talking about kind of what we plan on talking about today. We're going to talk about the LGBTQ community and basically how it's kind of been normalized for that community to go into therapy and get services that they need, but it hasn't been normalized for some other communities. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Keegan has also worked with the homeless community, which I think is so important. So we're going to chat about that. We're going to talk about trauma, a lot of different things. So thanks for being with us. There's Keegan.
Hi.
I can hear you perfectly.
Yay.
So, hey, I've been just talking, so I don't need to talk anymore. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Keegan. Where are you? How are you doing? And let's just learn about your background and what you do.
Sure. So, currently, Instagram, text, Austin. I process in Colorado. July 1st. Get back. And yeah. Trying to well as I can going on in a while, months, but currently practice at the mental health.
So we're getting bad sound from you still, and actually just got a comment about how you're going in and out. I'm not sure. Maybe it's the connection. We're
I'll go
into
into
Keegan's house, everyone.
Office. I live with my parents right now, so we are a lot of space.
Yes. I think a lot of people are at home, you know, like chilling with family. I've considered like going down to Arkansas, like to see my family, but I don't know.
Yeah. It's great. It has its own
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's part of what's going on with me. Just kind of figuring out how to be a 35-year-old at home in Texas.
Well, when you say it like that.
Yeah. A private practice. Yeah, it has challenges, but for the most part, I'm doing really well. It's been nice to change my pace, change my routine. and learn a little bit more about myself and reconnect with friends and family that I didn't really get a chance to connect with in my past life.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
I think that's what everyone is doing, kind of rekindling with everyone, you know, and just getting a chance to spend time and talk to people that you don't typically have time to check in on, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Good. I mean, for an example, how we do a Zoom call.
Yeah.
With our mutual friends.
Exactly. Right. That's how we met.
Yeah, it was really fun, and never been before, so that was cool.
Yeah, you'd never done Zoom?
Well, I've not really a lot before. We don't have apparently for a subscription to allow a lot of people on it, which I don't do. I'm all about for.
Oh, Keegan, I'm still having an issue hearing you. It was good, and now it's going in and out.
Let me see if I can just log off of this. Like close the app back on. Would that be okay?
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
See. All right. Who knows what's happening with the technical difficulties? It's me again, everyone. Just to tell you a little bit about why I'm doing this. Mental health has been very important to me my entire life. My mom is a licensed LCSW, which is a licensed social worker. She is also the clinical director of a mental health center. So I've spent many years of my life going to talks, going to events, meeting her clients, learning about all about mental health and just counseling and therapy and whatever that may be. I recently, for the past 5 years, I've been experiencing my own mental health journey. I'll talk more about that later. But I have personal firsthand experience and secondhand experience. So this is really important to me, that we have this conversation and that more people learn about mental health and just what it means. Hi.
Hello.
Okay, let's see. Do some talking.
Back. I can hear it still, but I'm not sure why. Let me see if I can put my headphones on.
Oh, yeah, headphones.
Headphones will work. I'll play. Gotta love technology.
Ella said it's echoing. I don't hear an echo, but
Okay, is that better?
that may be the trick.
Okay.
Okay, how does that sound, everyone? Send us some feedback. We have some helpers here. Okay, I think I can already hear you a little better just from hearing your background.
Okay. Cool. I can still hear it echo in mine, but I can live with it. Unless...
Keep talking, Keeg. That's what Ella said.
Oh, Ella. Ella, you should be working.
Exactly. And Ella is the reason that we, like you were saying, the reason that we met on a Zoom call back in April. And I was so excited to meet you. And I'm so excited to be able to talk to you now. Apparently they can hear you through my speakers. So maybe, I don't know what's happening. Maybe our Instagrams aren't awake yet.
It's Friday.
I know. It's like Friday, they're over it. We've been working for everyone. It's like, look at here. Get your life together, people. Go get on a Zoom call. That's what Instagram is saying. Okay, let's see everyone. So I have my headphones on. Keegan has his headphones.
Yes. Ooh, the echo's gone.
Echo is gone. We can talk now, Keegan.
Yay. We made it.
We made it through. The first struggle of the day. Oh yeah, you sound so good now. Okay. So we've done it all. Yay. So we have a few people saying better, it's perfect. Thank you all so much for sticking with us. This is really going to be an awesome conversation, so I'm glad you're hanging around. So yeah, Keegan, tell us a little bit more about yourself because we
Yeah.
didn't catch everything, and just what you're doing and what you do in the mental health or behavioral health field.
Yeah, sure. So, my name's Keegan. I currently live in Texas. I am living at home with my parents during COVID. I've been here for the past year and a half, though. Um, I've been on kind of a little hiatus from my career, but through this journey of living in Texas, I've um, reconnected with therapy, mental health, um, and I am in the process of moving back to Denver to open up my private practice, specifically serving those who are identifying as LGBTQIA plus, youth aged. That's kind of my shtick and my passion lies with that population. I am from Texas. I grew up here in Texas, from a little town called Waco. Y'all might have heard about it out
Yeah.
there. The silos, which weren't a thing before Joanna and Chip, they were just old rusted metal things, and now it's kind of blown up. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and they have good cupcakes. I actually have been there once to get their cupcakes. They're pretty good.
Okay,
Uh,
okay.
but if you don't know, a little bit about Waco
Mm-hmm.
is that's where Dr. Pepper was created. Um, they moved
Yeah.
to they moved to Dublin, and that's kind of where they manufacture right now. But it started in Waco,
Hmm.
and I think there's something my niece could talk about this. There's because my niece knows everything about Waco, but maybe the first suspension bridge in Texas, and I think the Brooklyn
Oh.
Bridge was modeled after the suspension bridge in Waco.
Oh wow.
But Waco Pride.
Yes, Waco. You know,
Yeah,
I
come
shout
through
out
Waco.
Pine Bluff, Arkansas all the time, and nobody knows what that is, but that's my hometown. So,
Yeah, come through Pine Bluff. Come through.
okay, come through Waco.
Um, but yeah, I went to school in Dallas, or UNT, and studied marketing. Had a very different career before being a therapist. Then moved up to Denver to go to grad school for therapy, and I have a master's in counseling psychology. And yeah, I graduated in 2016, and the
Mhm.
past 4 years have been, or I started in 2014, so the past 6 years has just been a journey of self-discovery, um, what my place is in this world, how I
Mhm.
want to show up, and what I want to do.
Mm.
It's been a rocky journey, and yeah, now I'm in a really good place, and I'm really excited about getting back to Colorado and practicing again, and everything is just falling into place, which makes me feel like I'm doing the right thing. So
Yeah.
that's good.
You know, sometimes it takes time. Even if you know that you're on the right path, things can still take time and you may have some setbacks. But just as long as you're working within your purpose, you know,
Right.
things will smooth out and everything will come to fruition when it's
hmm
time.
When it's
Mm-hmm.
time, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a patient person. And I think my ego has been the biggest thing I've been really working on
Mm-hmm.
is I have a really loud, opinionated ego, and it really took me down some dark paths. And I think coming to Austin and living here with my parents for the past year and a half has really been important for my journey in self-acceptance and self-love,
Mm-hmm.
and allowing that voice to exist, but not letting it to control me.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a question really quick. I don't want to
Yeah.
forget um, because I have never heard this before, and I consider myself to be very aware of things.
Yeah.
But you said LGBTQIA plus. Is that what you
Yes.
said? I had
hmm
never heard that.
I think there's a lot of there's shorthand versions, there's longer versions. I think I got LGBTQIA plus from school. I think that's maybe the thing that the list that a lot of people use, but um, yeah, there's really
So what's IA
yeah.
plus?
IA plus is intersex, IA, ally, plus is just everything else.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, and I think that will grow. There's a lot of different iterations of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really interesting to learn how each part of the country uses it differently. Like in Colorado,
Mm.
they have a GLBT center, so it's GLBT, um, not LGBT, and so it's really interesting to learn and to see how other communities use that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it. Thank you for clarifying because I think a lot of us don't know. I don't even know if everyone knows what LGBTQ stands for.
Yeah,
Certain people, might not even be privy to that. So I wasn't privy to the IA plus. So I think it's important to have those conversations
yeah,
and just make things more inclusive. What I think is interesting. I'm kind of going far with this, but as the Black community,
mm,
we haven't been accepted for so long. But then it's hard for us to accept the LGBTQ, and then it has to be hard for another. It's like
right,
we have to be if we want to be accepted by everyone, we have to accept everyone, and I
right,
don't think people sometimes realize that.
yeah,
And
yeah.
a lot of times we have to shift and mold ourselves into what people want of us as opposed to what we really are and getting acceptance from that. So, yeah, let's
I
talk
like
a
that.
little bit more about the LGBTQ community. I was saying before you hopped on that you said it's kind of more normalized for that community to go through therapy and to, have those experiences and to get the support that they need. So let's just talk about a little bit more about that community in particular and therapy and what does that mean to go through therapy as an LGBTQ person.
Yeah, I mean, it's been that's also been a part of my journey personally and professionally, being on both sides
Mm-hmm.
of that. And I think with my journey, I feel like in my personal journey, therapy was something that helped me understand identity a little bit more because
Mm-hmm.
identity extends beyond sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
And so, growing up, um, especially in therapy in my early 20s, I was hyper focused on my sexuality. Like that was something I needed to solve. And I
Mm-hmm.
learned through that it's just one piece of the puzzle of identity because we have many identities.
Mm-hmm.
And I think therapy provides a space for LGBTQ people to be themselves. However, I mean, it is very as a as someone who identifies as gay, it can be scary to go out and find a therapist because you never
Mm-hmm.
know if they're going to accept you or if they will understand you.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why it's important for there to be more presence in the therapy community for gay therapists. We need more
Yeah.
trans therapists. We need more gay therapists, lesbian therapists, all like any identity in the LGBTQ is therapy because I think that is important for individuals to relate to and to have a therapist who can understand um, things that we go through.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
right. And I
Yeah,
think
because
it's
as a Black woman, I was like, I want a Black female therapist. She's gonna know.
right. She's going to
So
know.
yeah, so
She's
that
going to
makes a
know.
lot of sense. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And and it's not to say that cis therapists are less than or can't provide excellent service as
Mm-hmm.
allies. And I think my last two therapists, or two out of the last four, have been identified as gay, but two of them have been um, heterosexual identifying. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I still liked, they did bring me a piece of my journey to me. Like there was a lot of things I did take away from that. But at the end of the day, I think it is important, for me at least, to have a gay therapist, just to have
Mm-hmm.
someone to relate to.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I'm gonna slide in really quick
Yeah.
because I mentioned before as we were kind of trying to get on about how we were gonna talk about dating therapists.
Yeah.
I had to say it like that. And you just said you've had four therapists. I've had four therapists and a psychiatrist. So,
Hmm.
I've worked with five people on my 5-year mental health journey.
Right.
So I think it is important for everyone to know that if going into therapy is the choice for you, you're not necessarily going to sink in with the first person that you meet. You might, and it is great.
Right.
But, there is a process of finding a therapist. So, can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, just like in friendships or in, finding a doctor, you're not going to jive with everybody just because they are therapists and they are skilled at certain things doesn't mean that you're going to click with them or mesh with them. And so I think, it's it's a double-edged sword because you are in a place in life where you want to seek therapy and and most times people seek therapy when they're not doing too well.
Mm-hmm.
Rarely is it where you are like, oh, I'm doing so well, let me get a therapist.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that does happen. And but typically it's frustrating to go through a process of finding a therapist because I want to normalize, you're not going to mesh with every one of them. And
Mm-hmm.
I would just encourage that person to continue trying, um, and really narrow down, like write down kind of like your values. Like for you, you wanted a black female therapist. I
Mm-hmm.
needed a gay male therapist.
Mm-hmm.
So writing down like what you are looking for, like those basic things will help you kind of narrow down the search and eliminate a
Mm-hmm.
lot of therapists. There are definitely platforms where you can search for therapists and compare.
Mm-hmm.
Psychology Today is a great resource for that, where you can filter out, like psychologytoday.com, and you can filter out by gender, insurance company, specialization, location,
Mm-hmm.
um, and just narrowing that down will kind of help you work through that.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you don't know if it's a good match on your first session. Um, and so just pushing through that and just knowing that when you find a therapist that you click with, as a therapist, the most important thing in therapy is the therapeutic relationship. So how you respond to your therapist and how you
Mm-hmm.
feel that connection is the most important piece to therapy. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's kind of what I would encourage everybody, the viewers and anybody who watches this, is like just pay attention to that. Pay attention to how
Mm-hmm.
you feel with that therapist.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and if they're hearing you, maybe we all kind of speak in our own language,
Mm.
and
Hmm.
I think it's important to have someone that understands the way you speak, and
Right.
what you're trying to communicate. Because oftentimes when we start therapy, we're not saying the right things. We're saying things that are happening, but they may be coming from somewhere else. So having a therapist that can hear what you're saying and decipher and kind of break down what you actually mean, I think
Right.
is, really important.
Right. And that is like another layer of um, connection, is finding it because different therapists operate from a different modality.
Mm,
And a lot of you viewers who are in therapy or interested in therapy might have heard terms like CBT, DBT, psychoanalysis, psychodynamic. There's a lot of different ways that therapists provide therapy, and
mm,
a lot of the times that can really affect how you feel in the room with them, because a lot of people don't like to talk about their past or their families. They just want to move forward. And
mm,
so that kind of communication and being understood by a therapist is important. So just kind of as you find a therapist, if you've gone through a couple of them, take note of like what kind of therapy modality they're using, and that might be an indicator of how you can move forward in choosing a different therapist by eliminating that.
right. So we're
Yeah.
talking a lot about therapy, but I do want everyone to know that there are, of course, other options
Hmm.
than therapy. So if someone is feeling like a certain way about their life and they just feel like it's time to do something, I don't know what to do, what are some first steps that we could take to kind of go towards our healing?
Yeah. I mean, self-love. I think whatever you can do to love yourself, especially in times like this, with coronavirus and the other things that are happening right now, allowing yourself to feel whatever you need to feel,
Mm,
crying, screaming, tantruming, like it's that self-acceptance and that self-love. I think that's number one. I think
mm,
just being able to hold yourself, hug
mm,
yourself, tell yourself, you're enough.
mm,
I think
mm,
that is a really self-compassion and gratitude. I think
mm,
that's a game changer.
mm,
Especially for me, that's been a really, really helpful. And really just engaging in activities that make you feel good about yourself. Um, taking yourself out of your mind and in your body, going on
mm,
walks, exercising, coloring,
mm.
cooking, you know, talking with a friend on Instagram Live. um, yeah, just engaging in activities like that and finding that balance
Mhm.
of, yeah,
I think one thing you said about, us not having enough, I've read, I can't remember what book it's from. It may be from Daring Greatly, Brené Brown, Daring Greatly,
yes,
but she actually references another book. So I'm like, I hate mentioning a book when I don't know the book, but
yeah,
she speaks about how there's a lady that wrote about not enough and how we basically wake up in the morning and think, oh, I didn't have enough sleep, I don't have enough time, I don't have enough money, I don't have enough this. So if we can just start by saying, I am enough,
mm-hmm, yeah,
if we can start our day off telling ourselves that as opposed to the glass half empty, then what a shift that would make in our psyche,
right,
going throughout our days. So I just wanted to mention that when you mentioned the not enough part about
right,
how, we need to start telling ourselves that we do have enough. Even if we don't feel like, even if all we're telling ourselves is true, we're still enough to be here in this moment, to keep going, to keep just going after life and not stopping the flow. You
yeah,
are enough.
exactly. And also saying, I'm doing the best I can. That's another takeaway from Brene Brown that I got was she wrote something, and I can't remember what book it was, but we're all just doing the best we can. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes the best we can is trying. Sometimes the best we can is reacting in a way that is outside of, what our normal reactions are, like snapping at someone,
Mm-hmm.
you know, a healthy coping skill. It's the best you can do, and that's okay. You're enough. We're
Yeah.
enough.
So I have a question. Someone brought a question to you. You're frozen right now.
Oh
I don't know
no.
if you're
Oh,
frozen. I
there
can
you go.
hear you great, but oh yeah. Okay, so there's a question. How does
Sure.
one tell the difference between a therapist who doesn't understand you versus not receiving the feedback you were expecting? So let me say that again. How does one tell the difference between a therapist who doesn't understand you versus maybe not receiving the feedback you were expecting?
Yeah. That's a good
That's a
question.
great question, right?
Yeah. I
Thank you,
mean,
Phoenix.
yeah, I think, let me think about that. Because it's easy, honestly, just reflecting on that, like after that session, going home and like thinking about what they said. And, I think therapy does a good job with like exploration of self. So if
Mm-hmm.
you're, you know, limit yourself because we can always stay in our minds forever about something,
Mm-hmm.
but journal about it. And I would say if the pattern continues with the therapist where you're just kind of not feeling heard, then maybe bring that up to the therapist. I
Yeah.
think it's totally in your right. um, and I think every therapist or most therapists will say that it's a safe space for you to be open about that feedback. And if you're comfortable with that feedback, giving that feedback to the therapist, I would say do it. A lot of therapists are, trained to handle that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can relate to that. I've definitely been challenged by a therapist and they're like, they don't know what they're saying. And then
Uh-huh.
it's like, wait, they're right.
Yeah. Yeah, we've had a couples therapist that I just kind of felt like at times I was talking to a wall, and I think that's a good way to kind of tell the difference. Like, is is what you're saying getting through to the person, or
Mm,
is everything just kind of stopping at this certain place,
yeah.
because I kind of felt like that, like, wait, you're not hearing me though. But it could also be the way you communicate,
Hmm.
and maybe you aren't saying the things to really land on a person, or maybe you're not even saying the right thing, so that they can understand. So I think maybe there's a lot of scenarios that could be considered when you're not feeling heard, or you don't feel like you're getting the feedback, or they're not listening. So
Yeah.
that's probably like a case by case
And I
type
would,
thing.
and I guess I do need to add, therapists don't really do a lot of like advice giving. And so
Mm.
therapists are trained to listen, reflect, with the permission of the client, help connect
Mhm.
um, certain things, certain patterns that therapists see, but
Mhm.
rarely do therapists give advice. However, I'm noticing with this telehealth and with BetterHelp, because I'm also a therapist on BetterHelp, it's
Mhm.
a different way to give and receive therapy. And I as a therapist and a clinician, are trying to find that balance between sitting and listening with a client and also advice giving, because it's a platform that allows that. And so
Mhm.
it's something that I'm hoping a lot of counseling programs incorporate into their training, is just more telehealth stuff,
Mm.
to really help clinicians be the best resource for clients on that platform. Because
Mhm.
yeah, it's not that common for therapists to really sit there and give advice, because it's not our place to know the best advice for that client. The client is the expert, and so they're going to know
Mhm.
what the answers are, and it's our job as therapists to help them find that best answer for themselves.
Right. Yeah, I have someone, Lakia, actually mentioned, like, if the therapist is talking more than you,
Yeah,
then you
there's a
kind of
problem.
know that there's a bit of an issue. So yeah, like, just there are a few things that you can
Hmm.
just know, like,
Yeah,
this isn't right. And definitely, if your therapist is talking more than you, then you're not in the right room.
and I'll quickly give an example of one of my friends. My close friends is a therapist,
Mm-hmm.
and she told me about going finding her own therapist, and she was struggling to find one. She went to this one lady who like made her talk to a stuffed animal like it was someone else on the first, either on the first session or the second session, and that rubbed her the wrong way. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't want to talk to an invisible person like on my first session. Like,
No, we're
that's just
not there
weird.
yet. Yeah.
Right, we're not there yet. And so that's a red flag for her. That was like, nope, not for me. Move
Mm.
on. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. There's another question, and I'll speak to this, of course, but definitely you speak to it as well. How do you feel about life coaches?
Yeah.
Now, I feel that
Yeah.
life coaches are awesome because I coach.
Right.
I coach people. So, for me, it's kind of a way to have therapy without having therapy,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think life coaching is more about, okay, what is your goal? How do we take action? How do we learn more about ourselves? And how do we get to that zone of genius, which is from
Yeah.
another book that I'm reading, The Big Leap. I'm reading it for the
Ooh.
second time.
I'm
Um,
writing that down. The big
okay, yeah,
bleep.
the Big Leap.
Oh, leap.
hmm
Okay.
I'll grab it actually so everyone
Yeah.
can see. But
Please.
yeah, you know, I think it's all about what works for you.
Mm-hmm.
Does therapy work? Does life coaching work? Does going to yoga work? Does meditating work? I think they can all work if you are committed,
Right.
and fully there to receive whatever can come your way. But what do you think about life coaches?
I would love to become one. I like honestly, as I'm building my private practice and my own brand, I've always said like, especially with the amount of experience I've had working with the clients I have, I've definitely experienced sometimes therapy isn't for everyone. Sometimes it's a peer support. Sometimes it's, community-based counseling and not going into the office. Sometimes it's different things. And I feel like life coach, I feel like eventually that will be something that's something I already feel a relation to because I think that's just my style. It's more approachable than therapy, I think, for most people. And I'm really interested to learn more about how to become one and what that looks like. So, probably on an offline, we could talk about that. 'Cause
Yeah.
I would love to know about what you do and how you've been able to build a brand around that. But yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think therapy is great for a lot of people, and so is life coaching. And yeah, and I think it would be cool to incorporate life coaching into my practice as a part of like opening up the net for people for self-improvement and self-help.
I love that, opening
Yeah.
up the net. Yes. Catch us all, Keegan.
I'm here to catch you, everybody. I'm here for you.
So, let's talk a bit about the homeless community.
Yeah.
I've lived in Atlanta, I've lived in New York, I live in LA now. But I'm from a small town, so I've been able to see the homeless community in a lot of different areas, and it looks different everywhere you go, which I don't think people kind of realize.
Yeah.
But some of the issues that they have to deal with in certain areas may be different than another. So can you just tell about that experience?
Sure. Yeah. So I guess to give everybody context, she's asked me this because I have about 2 years or a little over 2 years of working with the homeless population, both in Denver and in Austin. And in Denver, I was working with ages 18 to 60, 18 and up. And here in Austin, I was working with 18 to 24, the youth age. Austin is currently aiming to end youth homelessness by the end of this year.
Oh, wow.
Which basically means they're wanting to get to a functional zero. So that means as someone enters homelessness, they're taking someone out. So it's a revolving door almost, instead of it just being a lot of people outside. So, which is being funded by the HUD, Housing and Urban Development, and the City of Austin.
Okay.
So yeah, it's very different in both cities, and I'm sure as it is around the country. This topic always gets me going because it's a really important topic. The state of Colorado has expanded Medicaid, and so the services that the people experiencing homelessness receive are free therapy, case management, psychiatry. They have free access to all those mental health services. It was been difficult moving here to Texas because that is not the case here. It's a very different culture around it. And I mean, both places have, Denver does a lot of good things. They also don't do a lot of good things either. Austin does great things, doesn't do a lot of good things either. So there's pros and cons to how it's being addressed in both cities. But yeah, I think the biggest thing that I've learned is just language around it. And being gay, language is important. So instead of saying homeless people or the homelessness, it's people experiencing homelessness. So because it's, people with, bipolar disorder, people with depression, they're not depressed, they're not bipolar, they're experiencing bipolar.
Right.
And so that's kind of, we're extending that language on to people experiencing homelessness because this is just sometimes a snapshot in their life. This is something that they're experiencing. and it's a huge problem. And as far as how cities, the social, what's the word? The social attitude towards people experiencing homelessness, and the idea that they're choosing to be there, or that they're lazy. I've been working with this
Yeah.
population for 2 years, and that is not the case. They do not want to be experiencing homelessness. They don't want to be living outside. They have dignity. They have the right to have dignity. And until we see them and see people outside as a person,
Right.
we really have a long way to go. And I think I'm encouraged and I have hope. Definitely by working in Austin with them. They've already done this program with the veterans here, I believe. And we're now trying to tackle the youth aged. And it just like also working with this population, it's opened my eyes to like the broken systems. Of course, you know, there are so many broken systems,
Yeah.
and you know, it's pervasive through a lot of different systems. And we need people who are watching this who have positions of power and privilege to get out there and vote, and to be a part of lobby, to be a part of the conversation to change this, because I think that we all agree that something needs to happen. And sometimes we don't know what that means or what we could do. But a lot of it is just engaging in conversations, engaging in the community, starting at the local level. And I think as long as there's action, there could be hope.
I love that. As long as there can be action, there can be hope. I just had to say it again.
Yeah.
I'm going to be like Oprah. That was a tweetable moment. I love when she says that. She's like, tweetable. So that was a tweetable moment, Keegan. And thank you for sharing with us the terminology to use, people experiencing homelessness. You know, that kind of changes it for me, the way I receive that, you know. So I think if we can all start to speak in that way, then it makes it a little more understanding and a little more just ground level, like, oh, they're experiencing this, it's not that they are this thing, because if they are this thing, there's no way out of it.
Right. And that's a lot to put on someone, you know. Yeah.
Wow. So let's see, let's move on. So trauma.
Oh, yeah. Trauma.
Let's talk about trauma. We've been experiencing trauma in our country for hundreds of years. As someone in the Black community, we experience it week to week. We know the story about George Floyd. We know that these things are still happening, and they can be traumatic even if you don't experience them firsthand. We all just go through trauma. So how can we work through trauma, or how can we even recognize? Maybe that's the first question. How do we recognize that we've experienced some form of trauma?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's been really, you know, this week has been hard for me to process all of this too. Because as someone who has experienced trauma, you're more prone to being re-traumatized by things, you know, due to PTSD. So it's just like you sometimes live in a constant state of anxiety and depression, and feeling lack of control around what's happening. And that, I mean, is so the case with things like George Floyd and many others who have lost their lives in senseless ways. And yeah, I think how to deal with it. I mean, honestly, recognizing that something is not sitting well with you. I think just being more in tune with your body and your mind and your emotions. And if something if you find yourself reacting in a way that's not really productive and kind of hurting, like working against you in your productivity. So if you're not going to work, or you're, it's causing you to use maladaptive coping skills like drinking to an extent to where it's interrupting certain things in your life. You're not getting out of bed for days, the extreme versions of things that people are already probably doing. Like, there are days where I definitely sleep more because I'm not feeling it. There are definitely days where I drink when I'm not feeling it. But if those things that you're doing interrupt a certain part of your life and it's causing you more harm, that is kind of an internal flag where it's like, okay, something's wrong. And I need to maybe either therapist, life coach, yoga, engaging in those activities to really help bring you back down to earth and into your body. I'm definitely a mindfulness-based therapist, so I definitely use terms like in your body, grounded.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
yeah, all about the yoga. I have my incense going in the other room, but I get better connection in here.
Darn.
But yeah, trauma, it's hard because, at this point, trauma is so common. It's so sad to think that trauma is baseline. We've all experienced trauma. Living in this time is traumatic.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to really sift through the bullshit. And yeah.
What is trauma?
Yeah, I think trauma, that's a really good question, a very complex question and a complex answer. How would I define trauma?
Because I think just like mental illness, there's kind of like a stigma around having trauma. Like, if you have trauma, I don't think people want to have trauma.
Right.
Because that means something about your life and what you're doing now, I don't know. But yeah, so I just wonder, like, what actually is trauma?
Yeah, and trauma is like, the word trauma could be stigmatizing. It could trigger somebody. I feel like trigger is a good way to maybe describe trauma. If you feel triggered in a sense that something happens and you respond in a way that isn't in line with maybe who you are and your identity, that would be something that you could look into as far as, like, did I have a traumatic event where, something as simple being in a Starbucks line, you didn't get, something happened and they messed up your order and you react in a way that's like, whoa, was that a normal reaction to something, that there's a lot probably deeper to that response.
Right.
And being able to identify, is this something else, or am I really upset about my Starbucks drink right now?
It's probably something. It's probably something else. Like,
it's probably something else.
And if getting the Starbucks drink messed up makes you that upset to have that big of a reaction, then there is something that you need to do.
Right.
There's some action that needs to be taken.
Right. Trauma, when I think of trauma, I think it could be something like a car accident's traumatic, something major that happened in your life that is like a life event.
Yeah, like even something that happened in your childhood can be a traumatic experience.
Yeah.
And you can carry that.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll self-disclose. So, like, I've had 3 traumatic childhood events. One of them was moving. Like, my parents decided to move from our hometown of Abilene to Waco when I was in 4th grade. And I had the hardest time with that transition. I couldn't sleep. I had insomnia. My mom had to sleep with me. I cried every day at school. That was super traumatic. And I think that has a lot to do with how I deal with change, right, as an adult. I had health problems as a child. And I think that's why I have a certain view on, taking care of myself and self-care. So I think a lot of things, especially at that young age, trauma can really alter our brain development and sometimes it takes a lifetime to process through that. And trauma is not something that just like it happens to you and it goes away. It's something that kind of follows you, but you learn how to manage it to live, a productive, happy life.
Yeah. And then I think we do that so much we get to the point where we can't even identify it even more. We
Right.
know that the feeling is there, but we don't know where it came from because we've been doing so much practicing of kind of pushing it away
Oh, yeah.
and, not dealing and maybe not even realizing that it's something we need to deal with.
Right.
Until it gets to a level where, like you're saying, it's like, okay, this is disrupting the flow of my life.
Right.
Something's got to give. Yeah.
Right. And I think when we push things down and we don't acknowledge or process, our body, it stays in our body. It doesn't really go anywhere. And our mind does a good job of protecting itself. So if we don't remember, that is our brain protecting ourselves. And and sometimes it comes out in dreams. Sometimes it comes out in those reactions to the Starbucks lady or male. And yeah, it's just really, trauma's complex, very complex.
So we'll definitely, the next time we do this, we'll talk a little bit more about trauma because I do think, that's an important part of everyone's life. Really quick, this may be a bit much to say, but would you say that we all experience some form of PTSD?
Personally, yes. I think we're fragile beings. I really do. And I think that, no matter what, how much money you have, the color of your skin, the gender, sexuality, any an identifier, trauma is everywhere. It's pervasive among everybody. So I think that we all can experience trauma in some sort during our lives. Yes, I believe so.
Okay. So let's talk about, because I think this has a lot to do with trauma as well, anxiety and depression.
Yeah, my two favorite friends.
Yay! Mine too. We've been real good friends over the past few years, so I know them well.
Yeah. Yeah. Anxiety and depression. Yeah.
Yeah. So how I know that, well, talk about anxiety. I don't want to say anything that you may say, so.
Anxiety is, I feel like that's my baseline. I'm anxious. I've had a journey with anxiety, because for the longest time, I've blamed everything on depression. I'm a depressed person. I can't get out of bed. That's the thing that I focused on the most. I'm not sure why. Maybe it was language in my family. Maybe that was used more than anxiety. I don't know where that came from. But I always just had an emphasis on depression, so my focus is on depression. And so up until recently, I don't know if it was a book I read or a therapist, but after talking and thinking, I realized, my depression is coming from my anxiety. So I've basically acknowledged more about my anxiety. I just thought my anxiety was what everybody felt. Like I thought that like my racing heart or like the way my sweating or palmy hands, I thought that's how everybody was. And so recognizing anxiety was a huge game changer for me, and knowing the relationship between anxiety and depression really helped me identify the waves of depression, anxiety, and the pattern of depression and anxiety. But yeah, so me personally, this is how I experience it. I tend to get super anxious and get overwhelmed, and then I'll crash into a depression. And my depression comes from just all this anxiety. It's my body kind of needing a break from that. And so I'll dip down into it. And so now I've learned how to identify it. Oh, I'm getting anxious. If I don't attend to this anxiety, I could go into a depression. So it's really helped me be aware of it.
Do you think they're always related?
I'm not sure. I mean, clinically, I feel like there is an association, but I feel like everybody's different and experiences it in different ways. And so I definitely think there's a relationship. However, I think we experience it in very different ways as people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I feel like there is definitely a connection to both. I mean, when I see clients and they talk about one or the other, I anticipate hearing symptoms of the other.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll make sure to like name that in session, not as like this is what you're experiencing, but I wonder what you would think about this because you say this and you're also saying this. Do you think they could be connected? And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, a lot of the times, they do see a connection in themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely do think there's some sort of connection with it. Yeah.
And do they share the same symptoms at times?
Hmm. For me, I don't believe so. I
Okay.
think, but we all are different. Like I'm a very much extrovert, very not afraid to feel my
Mm.
feelings, very not afraid to like be social, put myself out there, do things that make me feel uncomfortable. And I feel like maybe people could um, retreat into themselves and avoid and kind of isolate. And that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of a symptom of depression, isolation. Um, and that could be due to an anxiety around something.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they don't have the same symptoms, but they kind of flow into each other.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what are some symptoms of anxiety and then depression?
Yeah. So anxiety, I would say um, just racing heart, sweating, um, racing thoughts. Um, I would say those are the most common ones.
Mm-hmm.
Wonder if anybody I have so I'm reading everybody who's on here and I have a
Uh-huh.
couple therapist friends who are on here and I'm like, oh, y'all should chip in.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
please do.
yeah,
Come on, guys.
yeah.
You're next.
It's been like a few years since I've actually looked at the DSM, which is kind of our Bible as therapists
Mm-hmm.
that kind of go over symptomology.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, depression is definitely like isolation. You know, thought like dark thoughts. To put it plainly,
Fatigue.
fatigue, low
Mm-hmm. Excessive worry.
apathy, excessive worry. Yeah, I mean, excessive worry. Yeah.
I'm
Thanks,
like, oh
thanks,
yeah,
Julia.
I'm like reading.
Yeah, excessive worry.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, honestly, excessive worry is another symptom for me of anxiety. Like, I tend to worry, so that is something that is very similar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
someone said repetition,
bouncing
mom
knees. Yep,
bouncing knees. Yeah.
that's my sister. She does bounce her
Oh.
knees. We get that from our mother.
Hmm.
Yeah, bouncing knees. Um, yeah, fidgeting. Fidgeting is another one that
Yeah.
I do. I
That's my
actually
big one too. I like have to fidget.
I have my
Um,
little crystal that I usually hold when I get anxious.
I have mine too. I have like different stones and everything for different moments, you know. Yeah, irritability was my big one. Um, yeah, so racing thoughts. Let's see. Yeah. So, yeah, there's a lot. But I
There's
think
a lot.
everyone does need to um, it's kind of different for everyone, you know, but
Right.
there are some common things that so even if you don't have sweaty palms, that doesn't mean that you're not anxious in the
Right.
moment. You know, there could be other things.
And typically deep breathing can really help with that. It's
Mm-hmm.
just a lack of oxygen.
I know there's like a right. There's my therapist taught me the 2-4-7, I think.
247.
Inhale for 2
Mm.
seconds, hold your breath for 4, exhale for 7.
Yeah. I've not heard of that count before. I've heard four like a four count of each, like a square breathing. So breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4, breathe in.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of goes in a circle. But yeah, I think anything that you can do to slow your breathing down by making intention around breathing, holding, and letting out
Mm-hmm.
is huge.
Mm-hmm. So I'm totally not done with this conversation, but Instagram is gonna end the video in a few seconds. So let's hop off
Yeah.
and then hop back on.
Okay.
Okay, rejoin us, everyone.